Hey folks, this is Rhykker with a Diablo 3 patch 2.6.5 Season 17 video on the best builds. In this video, we're going to take a quick look at 50 top builds, rank the top 10, and then rank all of these in different tiers, forming a tier list of relative power amongst each other. And as we're going through these builds, we'll also take a look at which are the best starter classes for Season 17 based on the starter sets that you can earn via Haedrig's Gift throughout your seasonal journey. Now, if you want to skip straight to the top 10 builds, you can follow the timestamp on screen here. In the video description, we're going to have links to build guides or gear and reference guides for every build on this list, all 50 builds. Now, first off, for added context, if you have not watched our Season 16 tier list video, we will be referring to our past tier list and how certain builds have either risen or fallen with respect to last season's tier list. Our expectations for Season 16 mostly panned out with a few minor surprises. So as we bring up this season's tier list, first off, the F tier and D tiers of last season are completely knocked off this list. All of those builds are not going to be covered anymore. And we're now defining the old C tier to be the new F tier in Season 17. And our new F tier is still defined as 20 Greater Rifts behind the S tier. That's our top builds. That's just how far the new S tier has pushed things. Now, these builds in F aren't bad. It's just that relative to the top builds, F tier builds require more effort. So, dropping from C tier into F tier, we have the Gargantuan Pet build, using the Helltooth set for Witch Doctor. We have the Monk build that uses a mixture of Inna's and Uliana's set, and the Monk's Lashing Tailkick build using the SmokinWookie set. In all three cases, there exist more powerful builds that can be created with these sets, which we'll cover. Alright, now to give you folks the D tier. We're defining D tier as roughly 18 Greater Rifts behind our most powerful builds. In this tier, we have several builds that have been pushed down due to the readjustment of the tiers, but there is one notable exception: Inarius. The Necromancer's Inarius build was D tier last season, but it has risen in power this season, and thus remains in the D tier, rather than being pushed off the list along with all the other former D tier builds. The buff that Inarius receives this season pushes it several Greater Rifts higher in power. And as the starter set for Necro in Season 17, it's a robust set for early game. It's a one-size-fits-all kind of set, with a generic damage buff that allows it to be used in combination with many different skills. This makes a Necro a decent starter choice for Season 17. Other builds now in the D tier include the Witch Doctor's Helltooth Firebat build, which is the strongest Helltooth build you can put together. We also have the Demon Hunter's Unhallowed Essence Grenade build, once the strongest Demon Hunter build, but now far outclassed by most other Demon Hunter builds. We also have the classic Firebird build for Wizard. Now, Firebirds is the starter set for Wizard in Season 17, but it's a rather cumbersome build to play due to the awkward mechanics of the set, which makes the Wizard, in my opinion, a relatively poor starter class for Season 17. Now, in the D tier, we also have the Rothma Singularity Mage build for the Necro. This build is now outclassed by a Legacy of Nightmares version, thanks to the Season of Nightmares, which we'll cover later. We also have two Veer-based builds for Wizard, which are now highly outclassed by the buffed traditional Veer using Chantoto's set, which, you guessed it, we'll cover later. Lastly, in this tier, we have the Trag'Oul Corpse Lance build. Now, Trag'Ouls did receive a buff this season, however, that buff does not impact the Corpse Lance build. It will, however, benefit the Blood Mage build for speedruns. Alright, on to the C tier, which, as you can see, is 14 to 15 Greater Rifts behind S tier. Here again, we have several builds that have simply been pushed down due to the new S tier. We have the Demon Hunter Natalia build, which is outclassed by the Natalia Marauder build. We have the Witch Doctor Arakir build, the Barbarian Whirlwind build, the Inna Generator build, outclassed by another Inna build, and another Generator build. We have the Barbarian Leapquake build, which is built upon the Barb starter set for Season 17, Might of the Earth. Leapquake is a very fun build. It's powerful, but there are stronger and faster options out there for Barbs. Nevertheless, it makes the Barb at least a decent starter class for Season 17. We also have the SmokinWookie Wave of Light build, which will be outclassed significantly this season by the Legacy of Nightmares Wave of Light build. And I think this actually makes the Monk a strong starter choice for Season 17. The SmokinWookie Wave of Light build is an excellent multi-purpose build for various speedruns and greater rift pushing, and while you're running a SmokinWookie Wave of Light, you can also be gearing up for your Legacy of Nightmares Wave of Light, which will even use some of the same items, and all the while letting you practice roughly the same gameplay. Also in the C tier, we have the Sweep Crusader using the Roland set. It was C tier last season, but proved to be a little bit stronger than I expected, so it's not getting pushed down this season. We also have 2 Legacy of Nightmares builds making it onto this list. The Crusader's Legacy of Nightmares Heaven's Fury build, which may potentially prove to be stronger than C tier, but really is stronger as a Rift Guardian killer in a group than as a solo build. And then we also have the new Rapid Fire Legacy of Nightmares Demon Hunter build, which may potentially prove to be stronger than C tier, but is very unlikely to surpass the current top Demon Hunter builds by virtue of the mechanics of Rapid Fire. You have to sit in place and channel for several seconds to build up your damage, which makes you a sitting duck on a class that typically relies heavily on mobility to keep it alive. Alright, onto the B tier, which will be about 11 GRs behind S tier. Here we find the Talrasha Fire Meteor build, the Talrasha Star Pact build, the Firebird Star Pact build, the classic Condemned Crusader, the Legacy of Nightmares Condemned Crusader, new to our list, the Pestilence Necromancer, the Uliana Monk, and the DMO Wizard. Now we also have here the Legacy of Nightmares Spirit Barrage Witch Doctor, which was B tier last season, and will not drop this season thanks to a combination of the Season of Nightmares and the build performing a little better than expected in Season 16. We also have the Barbarian's Hammer of the Ancients Immortal Kings build that will not be dropping from last season, again due to it performing better than expected. Alright, on to the A tier. Now this is a group of great builds, but still they are on average about 8 greater rifts behind the S tier. Many of these builds were previously in the S tier, and now we're getting close to our top 10 builds. So some of these former S tier builds include the Marauder Demon Hunter, the Multi-Shot Demon Hunter, the Impale Demon Hunter, the N6M4 Demon Hunter. Basically, the Demon Hunter has a variety of solid high tier choices. But between those, Multi-Shot is the best for speedruns, but the most difficult to run at the highest greater rifts. N6M4 is likely the easiest to run at higher greater rifts with the greatest potential for survivability, so great choice for hardcore. And the Shadow Impale build is the easiest and quickest to put together while still being very, very, very strong. With Impale being the starter set for Demon Hunter in Season 17, Demon Hunter is perhaps the single best starter choice for the season. One of the crucial items to the Shadow Impale build is ridiculously easy to acquire. You craft a couple rare daggers, you bring them to your cube, and you upgrade them into legendaries. There are only 2 possible daggers you can get. One of those is the one you need. You can have a fully functioning endgame Demon Hunter build faster than any other class this season. And that build also happens to be among the best Demon Hunter builds. But if that sounds boring to you, you can use that Impale build to gear up for other builds. Now also in the A tier, we have the Charge Barbarian using Rhykkers and Immortal King set. We have the Inna Wave of Light Monk, which has proven to be more powerful than the SmokinWookie variant. We have the Legacy of Nightmares Wave of Light Monk, which in Season 17 will definitely surpass the Inna variant. Now, let's talk quickly about the Necromancer, which is the class that has actually benefited the most from the Season of Nightmares. We actually see 3 different S and A tier builds for the Necromancer using the Legacy of Nightmares set, or bonus at least. Thanks to the Season of Nightmares, we see the emergence of a Legacy of Nightmares Singularity mage build, which is made possible by freeing up the ring slots that this build so desperately needs. This variant is solidly more powerful than the Rothma Singularity mage build, and I would not be surprised to see Legacy of Nightmares Singularity replace the old Rothma Singularity for speedruns. We also see the Legacy of Nightmares Corpse Lance build being buffed this season, solidifying it as the most powerful Corpse Lance build. And now we're moving into our top 10 builds, and it was very difficult to pick only 10. Many of these builds I would rank as equally powerful, but rather than give you at number 5, we have these 5 builds or these 3 builds, I'm gonna commit to one build per placement. So for number 10, I'm going to put the Legacy of Nightmares Captain America Crusader build. And this is a bit of a conservative estimate on Captain America. It could potentially come out on top for Crusaders and beat out the top Crusader build, which would rocket it further along in this list. The Captain America build was buffed on the PTR in a big way, but then toward the end of PTR it was nerfed, and people, in my opinion, overreacted to the nerf. It's still a lot stronger than it was in Season 16. The nerf on PTR took it down a few to several greater rifts relative to where it was buffed, but that still puts it solidly in the A tier. It's still definitely going to be among the best Crusader builds, and potentially will become the best. Now, another build that was brought back to viability in Season 17, patch 265, is the Dagger of Darts Witch Doctor. Now, there's two variants of this build here, the Legacy of Nightmares version and the Zunimasa's version. And it's not entirely clear which one will become the best. The Zunimasa 6-piece damage buff is a bigger multiplier than 13 ancient pieces with Legacy of Nightmares. However, it only buffs your pet's damage and not your own damage, whereas the Legacy of Nightmares version of Dagger of Darts has the potential to work in a convention of elements, and your own damage is also buffed. That said, both these builds are definitely A tier. Both are among the top Witch Doctor builds. Both beat out Spirit Barrage. And this marks the first time Zunimasa's has ever gotten anywhere close to a high tier on one of my tier lists. One of these two builds is potentially poised to actually take the #1 Witch Doctor spot. We're putting it right now at a conservative 9th place, and you'll note that I am putting the Zuni version here rather than the Legacy of Nightmares version because maybe I'm just gunning for the dark horse, but I think it's Zuni's time to shine. And it's a lot easier to get together a 6-piece set than 13 perfect ancient pieces. That takes us to number 8, the Jade Witch Doctor, which again, most likely will be surpassed by Dagger of Darts. The Jade set is a very strong set, it's a very fun set, and it is the starter set for Witch Doctor in Season 17. That said, it can be a little tricky to play. It requires a very specific playstyle of setting up a bunch of dominoes and then knocking them down. This makes it not great for speed builds. So overall, because of the playstyle here, because of the lack of versatility, we're going to actually give Witch Doctor a mediocre start for Season 17. Now, coming in at number 7, we have the Hammered-In Crusader build, which I'm really hoping will be surpassed by Captain America. At number 6, we have the Monk's Raiment Generator build, which I would love to see surpassed by the Legacy of Nightmares Wave of Light build, but I'm a little skeptical as to whether that can happen. Coming in at number 5, we have the best Barbarian build, the Hammer of the Ancients Rhykker. Again, most of these builds that we're covering here in the top 10 are very, very close in power. At number 4, we have the Crusaders Invoker Thorns build. Now, the Invoker set is the starter set for Crusader in Season 17, so if you want to go straight Invoker, then you're off to a good start. Invoker performed better than I expected last patch, but that said, it's really only able to perform at its highest potential under very specific circumstances, requiring more greater rift fishing than most builds. This is a build that deals no area damage, so it could really only deal with one enemy at a time, and it works best against enemies that attack quickly rather than slowly, because you want to be triggering as many blocks as possible. So overall, it's a strong build, but to really perform at the highest levels requires a lot of constraints. Still, if Invoker is where you're aiming to go at the end, then Crusader is a decent starter for Season 17. Now we jump to number 3. Whereas these past builds were relatively close in power, 3 is going to be a step above. The Vir Chantodo Wizard. This patch, Chantodo's received a tremendous buff, solidly landing it at the top of A tier, with the, however remote, possibility of it actually squeezing up into the S tier. Now, Chantodo was buffed on PTR and then later received an adjustment that many interpreted to be a nerf, but in practice seems to have worked out to not be a nerf and possibly a buff. I suspect we have not seen the plateau of the power of the Vir Chantodo Wizard, but our S tier is so far above anything that it's not clear whether Chantodos will be able to catch up. Which takes us to the S tier. These two builds are very close in power, but we're going to rank the Legacy of Nightmares Star Pact Archon, aka the Bazooka Wizard, at number 2. This build is ridiculously powerful, but also ridiculously difficult to play perfectly. It's one of the most technically challenging builds in Diablo 3's history. It requires precise timing of a number of different windows. And if you screw up any of them, some might say the whole build falls apart, others would say you're just not playing optimally, and generally if you have the choice between playing the best build suboptimally or one of the top 10 builds optimally, you're probably going to do better on an optimal play of one of the top builds than a suboptimal play of the top build. The Bazooka Wizard emerged throughout the last season. It's the biggest surprise of Season 16, in fact. On paper, it seems like a build too difficult to run, too difficult to pull off, but there are some incredibly talented players out there. And with this now being the Season of Nightmares, it's gotten even more powerful. But will it surpass what we're ranking as the #1 build? That's to be determined. Which takes us to #1, the Legacy of Nightmares Thorns Necromancer. Now this build rose to unprecedented levels of power throughout Season 16, but there is one major caveat behind it, and that's that it is a build that really only performs well at the highest Greater Rift levels. The key to the tremendous power of a Thorns Necromancer build is its slow and gradual ramp up in damage output. The longer you attack an enemy, the more your damage rises and rises and rises and rises. So the longer you spend attacking an enemy, the higher your damage output gets. This means that at lower Greater Rift levels, most builds on this list will outperform this #1 build. It's only when it's taking very long to kill enemies that this build is able to catch up and surpass the other builds. For example, imagine a scenario where you pop into a car, you floor the gas, and it goes from 0 to 100 in a couple seconds. Then consider a second car. You get in, you floor the gas, and it takes 30 seconds to get up to 50. And then after another 30 seconds, you've reached 100. You finally caught up to the speed of the first car, but the first car at this point is so far ahead. But give it another 30 seconds, and car 2 is now going 150. And another 30 seconds, and it's going 200, and then 250, and 300. And the more time you give it, the faster it gets. So if you set these two cars racing down a track, after 1 minute, car 1 is going to be far ahead of car 2. But after 10 minutes, car 2 will be far ahead of car 1. And that is going to wrap up this video. Do remember to check out the video description for build guide videos on many of these builds. Stay tuned for more build guides being posted throughout the week and next. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and now YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on Patreon or YouTube and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, as well as monthly virtual hangouts. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.